a bit like in sport. You know, you need to get your basics right. You know, your skill set and so on right, and your fitness levels. Well, from a farming point of view and water quality point of view, you need to get your basics right. The regulations that have been there since 2006, it's basics: slurry storage, soil water storage, close period, buffer margins, watching the weather forecast when you're spreading slurries, growth rates. All those basic things are the real key to improving water quality. We need better application of those across the country.
Deirdre, great to be back with another podcast, and welcome back everyone. With €50 million being put on the table to support water quality actions, farmers within targeted areas across Ireland will get an opportunity to avail of these supports.
Yes, Carl, it's great to chat to our colleagues Mairéad Whitty from the Local Authorities Water Programme and Project Lead for the Water EIP, and Noel Meehan, Teagasc Manager of the ASSAP programme.
I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn.
You're Teagasc Sustainability Advisors. And you're welcome back for another Environment Edge podcast number 71, bringing you lots of discussion and chats to help improve farm sustainability.
Mairéad and Noel, you're very welcome to the show. Mairéad, there are a lot of EIPs going on nationally. Could you tell us or explain to us what is an EIP?
Okay, yeah. So an EIP is a European Innovation Partnership. So essentially, the EIP funds projects that lets farmers, scientists, and other experts work together to develop new practices that are environmentally friendly and economically sustainable. So the ultimate aim is to road test new ideas and practices that can then be used more widely for farmers. So that's what those EIPs are about, and that's what this EIP is about.
So we're about to go into what's called a Waters EIP. So can you tell us, Mairéad, what organisations are involved and how is it funded?
So the three main partners are LawPro, the Local Authorities Waters Programme, Teagasc and Dairy Industry Ireland. So we've gone together in a partnership and applied for the EIP. So the EIP specifically looks at reducing losses to phosphorus, nitrogen, sediment, and where relevant pesticides by promoting new practices, looking at the application of nature-based natural water retention measures and other measures on farms specific to the actual land holding and the pressures that are on it. The funding is coming from the EU. It's an EU partnership co-funded through the Department of Agriculture. So there's 50 million of funding which will go directly to farmers to install those measures on farms, and the Department of Housing has match funded that to the tune of 10 million for the admin side of the project. So that 50 million is ring fenced for grants for farmers to install these measures to improve water quality.
That's very exciting, isn't it? Great news.
It is. It's good news.
Nationally. Yeah, exactly. So why was it introduced, Mairéad? What was the pressure behind it, or the idea behind it?
So, as you know, ASSAP work with LawPro. When LawPro do an assessment and agriculture is identified as a pressure in a particular area, they send a referral to ASSAP. The ASSAP advisor will then go out to the farmer and look at those pressures in the context of the farm while speaking to the farmer. So it's a collaborative process, and identify measures that then can be installed on that particular farm. But one thing that did come back from that process is that funding was an issue. Some farmers they don't have the funds to do it. So that was identified as something that needed to be addressed to, improve the success of the programme. And then this EIP was applied for on that basis, that we would have grant in place when we've identified the right measure for the right place, that we would have grant in place to fund the installation of that measure.
So I suppose in summation, it's about, water quality. It's targeted at farmers where water quality is a pressure within a priority area for action. And us as advisors, we're ASSAP advisors, so we'll go out, we'll meet with the farmers and we'll identify suitable actions on farms. And then, you from there on then will pay X amount of money towards these additional actions.
Yes, and it's important to note that there are supplementary actions above the compliance measures that all the farmers have to do. There are supplementary actions.
Noel, are the supplementary measures that Mairéad's mentioned, are the gap regs not enough to sort the water quality problems out? Why do we have to go beyond that?
Yeah, I suppose the gap regs are there since 2006, and they set out the terms and conditions around farming and control of nutrients, and I suppose it's to protect waters really. It's the good agricultural practice regulations for protection of waters, what they're called. So they're there, but it's a one size fits all for the whole country. And what we have learned over a period of time is that other things need to be looked at in specific contexts. So different soil types and different topographies and so on, that you need to go in and get down to the nitty gritty and do very specific things and farm specific things to protect the water. So while the regulations have certainly done their job from the point of view of putting in regulations around storage of slurry and farming manure and soil water and spreading periods and buffer zones and all that kind of thing, what we've found is that in certain parts of the country, certain things, additional things are needed. So I suppose that's when Mairéad mentioned the supplementary measures, that's what we're talking about. So measures that go above and beyond what the regulations require, but these are voluntary measures. They haven't been regulated yet. I suppose any farmer listening to this will know that in the last 4 to 5 years in particular, the regulations have gotten much more tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's because, I suppose, water quality isn't where we need it to be. It's pretty much stagnated there in the last 2 or 3 years, slightly disimproved. But we are not where we need to be from the good, our targets of WFD, Water Framework Directive, which is good status for all waters. We're at about 54% of good status for rivers, which is a long way short of where we need to be. So that's why initiatives like the Water EIP, initiatives like ASSAP program have been brought in to go into farms in particular areas, see what's going on and give very specific and very targeted advice that will result in improvements of water quality. So that's the EIP is a continuation of that, because as Mairéad quite rightly pointed out, farmers are generally very positive towards this, but at the same time, some of the measures that's been asked cost money. They may reduce their productivity, and quite rightly, the burden shouldn't all fall on the farmers' back. Thankfully, both the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Housing have, through the EIP, have come up with funding to help farmers to cover the costs of putting in measures that will hopefully reduce impacts of nutrient losses from farms and improve water quality ultimately.
Cathal and I, from working with farmers, there's a really big openness, isn't there, Cathal, for farmers to try something different?
Farmers are hungry for information, and the farmers are the first people to tell you now that they know that there's an issue out there and they want to fix it. And Deirdre and I are probably like Noel, let's say, that some of the finest ASSAP advisors ever find. I can see Noel like nodding in saying yes there if you can't hear it. But like we go onto farms and we identify issues. The farmer wants to fix it, but sometimes it just goes beyond the budget. And I suppose this is where this comes in. Like you'd often ask a farmer, like, you'd be trying to persuade to put something in, but like most of the time it doesn't cost much, but the odd time it could cost 10, 15,000, or maybe someone has put in additional storage, they're into big money. But I think for the littler kind of smaller stuff that a farmer can't afford, these are the type of actions you're going to pay for. What are those type of actions, though? Like, can give us a flavour of what a farmer can draw down on, maybe.
I suppose we learned the phrase very early on in our journey with ASSAP, the right measure in the right place. And that rings true with regards to what we spoke about a minute ago about why the gap regs are there, and they're doing a very good job. We need to go above and beyond and put the right measure in the right place in certain areas, and that's what this EIP is designed to do. So, what kind of measures are we talking about? So, I suppose the first thing that we're going to do when we visit a farm is we're going to look at the farm in a full context and look at it from a rainwater management point of view. So, where does water when it rains, where does the water flow? So, obviously you're going to have down your neck of the woods, you have very free draining ground down in Kilkenny part of the world. Up where I am in Galway, we have maybe heavier soils, which means that the water travels in two different directions. So on the free draining soils, water travels around through the soil profile and into the groundwater and into the rivers, whereas in my part of the world, it's overland flow. Soils get saturated and water moves across the surface. So that's where the rainwater management plan comes in. It basically identifies on a farm how water moves through the farm, and that's different for everybody's farm. And once we know where the water is moving, is it over surface or through the ground or wherever? Well, then we can start deciding what is the right measure to put in the right place. So the water management plan is something that all farmers will get, and obviously will get compensated for. And then, I'll just maybe look at the nitrogen side of it first. So there's obviously nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment, and pesticides would be the primary issues we have with regards to pressures on water quality. But from a nitrogen point of view, one of the key things we're asking farmers to do is to look at their nitrogen and how they use it and how efficiently can they manage it. So where you have surplus nitrogen system, and it's not being used by a growing plant either in grassland plant or tillage plant, that nitrogen then has the potential to be lost if you have heavy rainfall. So looking at nitrogen use efficiency and then the conversations around how you improve that from a farmer point of view is one of the key measures for nitrogen. And then on the tillage side of the house, it's also looking at cover and catch crops and things like that. Other things like multi-species swards, that's there as well to help farmers to diversify the swards and look to see can they improve their efficiencies. I suppose then from a more phosphorus point of view or sediment point of view, again, it's about the right measure in the right place, and you're looking at trying to break the pathway. So if you have water moving over land, we have maps now. The EPA have generated these PIP flow maps. So basically, they're maps that show where water will move over the surface of the ground and where it enters the drainage network. And it's that pathway, those critical source areas is what we call them. That's where we need to focus our attention from an overland flow point of view. So you're looking at trying to break that pathway. So multiple things you can do. You can do riparian margins. You can put in little low earthen mounds. You can put in hedgerows on earthen mounds. You can put in ponds and swales and even in the drainage, the field drains now, and obviously not the water course, but even in the field drains, you can do various bits of light engineering works like putting in chambers or bunded structures or sediment traps and things like that. So the whole point is that you're trying to take out the phosphorus, take out the sediment, and once the water flows through, that's that kind of a filter system or whatever it is that the farmer wants to put in. Well, then you have a less of a contamination in the water and a better water outcome as a result. So that's just a very broad gist. Obviously, then there's other things around exclusion of livestock from waters from water courses. Everybody has to do that. Obviously, derogation farmers have to have that done, but non-derogation farmers don't. So that's quite an expensive one, and the biggest problem really with that is that while farmers might be happy to fence off a water course, it's having an alternative drinking supply is the key thing here. Cathal, I know you and Deirdre both have farmers that would be gladly do that, but they've no alternative drinking supply. So we have that looked at from the point of view of providing pasture pumps or solar pumps and drinking troughs as well, so that farmers can close off those water courses and have livestock there that they can water and so on. So look, that's just a very quick flavour of what we're looking at, Cathal, but
Noel, will you be paying per unit? So say, for example, if I wanted the Paris down in Kilkenny, if I wanted to put in some drinking points down there, solar or nose pumps, do you pay per unit or is it a percentage of it? How does the funding work?
Yeah, so look, I suppose what we're trying to do here is if we were asking a farmer to put in something that is voluntary, we're trying to allay the cost of the farmer. The farmer is doing something above and beyond what's required. So look, we're trying to make sure that the farmer is out of pocket on this one. So look at if a farmer needs to fence off, we'll cover the cost of the fencing. If a farmer needs to put in of a water course, if a farmer needs to put in a pasture pump or a solar pump, we will cover the cost of that as well. But there'll be a limit on how many of those we'll do because obviously solar pumps are quite expensive pieces of kit, and they can service quite large areas. So, certainly we'd be happy to provide them to a farmer. But in some situations, it depends on the land breakup of a particular stream. We may ask farmers to share one, well, because, you could have on a half-mile stretch, you could have 5 or 8 farmers all feeding out of it, and we couldn't afford to be putting in 5 or 8 solar pumps. So, if we can work on a kind of a collaborative or community kind of based system where we could share one, I think that's what we'll be trying to do as well. But look, we work very closely with farmers. We want to help them. We want this to work for water quality, and we want to, do the best that we can for the farmer and for the scheme or for the project. And we haven't gotten into it yet, but I think we'll be looking to see how it goes, and hopefully it'll go well for us.
You can give me that money, Noel, and I'll get it spent very quickly in Kilkenny. Noel, is it PAA access? So for anyone that doesn't know, that's a priority area for action. Or is the funding going to be delved out nationally?
I suppose I'll go back to the phrase I said earlier on, the right measure in the right place. So what the whole point of ASSAP was that, and working with LawPro, is that we would become very focused and very targeted where we're doing our work. So the first thing is that from a PA point of view, all these PAs are areas where water quality is at risk. Law program to do their bit of work and their research and their examinations, and to find that certain areas of a water body are more impacted than others. So you're focusing in on where the real problems are. So we're going to follow that template. We need to make sure that, like, while 50 million is a lot of money, the biggest EIP ever funded in the state, it still needs to be spent very, very carefully, and make sure that any money that we spend towards water quality measures will result in a positive water quality outcome. So we have to be very targeted. So what we're doing is we have a tiered level of access to the EIP. And there's 4 tiers, and the first tier of access is for farmers that have already had or will have in the future an ASSAP assessment carried out by an ASSAP advisor. And the reason why that is because we know that where the ASSAP advisors are going are very much directed by referrals from LawPro. So we know that those areas are impacted, and that measures going in there will have a positive impact on water quality. So it's very targeted. The second areas then are where we're looking to restore water quality. So in other areas outside of the PAs and outside of where ASSAP are working. So people like Rivers Trusts, the National Federation of Group Water Schemes have source protection areas. Those kind of water quality initiatives where we have a bit of science. We have a bit of information, and we know that such as phosphorus or sediment is a problem with this catchment, and if we get some riparian margins and some fencing off of water courses in this particular area, we will have a positive water quality outcome. So that's the second tier that we're looking at. That'll bring water quality back up. The third tier is similar for a water quality initiative that's out there from a Federation of Group Water Schemes, or from a local authority, or from a Rivers Trust, but that we are protecting water quality. So what that means is that water quality is already at a good status, and the measures are there just to maintain that and retain it. So that's the third tier, and the final tier then is any other farmers outside of that. The likelihood of getting down to the fourth tier, I'd say, is probably slim. I would expect that we would have a big uptake from the ASSAP farmers and from the farmers that would fall under the water quality initiatives with the Rivers Trusts and so on, and so on down along. So look, we'll see how it goes, but we're hopeful that we'll get a very good response from farmers. Like, it's great to have this available to farmers. They've been looking for it. They've had good working relationship with the ASSAP advisors, and now we've a few pounds to come back to them. So look, hopefully we'll get a good uptake.
So do you have a kind of a ballpark on how much would be going towards each farm? And I know, like, this is not a money-making scheme for farmers. So it's an ASSAP advisor comes up with a plan, and you pick an option and you advise that to the farmer. What kind of money could the ASSAP advisor expect to be able to, I suppose, use on that farm?
Yeah. So look, I mean, you made a very good important point there, Cathal. This EIP is to directly provide money to farmers to cover the costs of putting in measures to benefit water quality. You had your REP scheme and your glass scheme and all these other schemes which were while they're environmental schemes, they also are an income supplementation scheme. We don't have the money for that. Any money that we have, it really needs to go to measures that are going to improve water quality. So that's going to be very, very focused. Farmers, if they think they're going to make money out of this, I'm sorry, you're going to be disappointed. It's not what we're set up to do. We have 10 million a year for 5 years, and we did our sums as best we could at the outset, and we were looking at maybe getting around 3,500 farmers in per year. So that's looking at maybe around 3,000 to 3,500 euro per farm for that. So it depends on what you put in. I mean, solar power drinkers, could take up a lot of that money on very quickly. Other things then, like small riparian margins, while they're very effective, the cost of putting those in may not be that big. So it swings and roundabouts. But the important thing is that we budgeted for around 3,500. But look, if it's higher than that, if the measures are needed, and if the measures are going to do something, and it goes up to 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, that's okay. Likewise, it might only be 500 or 600 euro a farmer will get, but it could be a very key measure that goes in that will deliver. So you shouldn't equate the value to the impact on water quality. The value is just to compensate. The impact on water quality is really what we want here.
Have you factored in, say, group initiatives and that kind of things, like farmers getting together as groups with water related ideas getting together in the community? Will they be financed as well if they come up with an initiative?
Yeah, I suppose I mentioned earlier on about maybe grouping for the likes of a solar power drinker, where they do. But I think we have a list here, and what we learned from talking to other EIPs and people who've done this, you need to leave a little bit of room for local farmer innovation or ideas. Farmers are very resourceful, and they will come up with things that we would never think of, that would suit their certain set of circumstances. And I suppose what I'd say, we call them bespoke measures. And what I'd say is where a farmer has a solution that falls outside our list, and the solution works and it's costed and it makes sense, we would absolutely look at that on a case-by-case basis. And if we feel it's going to work and it's justified, we will work with the farmer to get that implemented.
Noel, we've seen improvements in water quality in a lot of the PAAs that, say, Cathal and I and our colleagues have been working in over the past few years. What benefit do you think will this EIP bring to water quality?
Go back to the overall water quality in the country. We know we're not meeting our targets, and we know that while the regulations that are there have been effective up to a point, we need to go above and beyond that to realise water quality improvements. All right, and we have worked very closely with the EPA and with LawPro and other organisations like that to come up with a method and a way of identifying the right measure in the right place. I know I'm using that phrase again, but that's really what it is. And the EIP is there to help nudge things over the line. So while we have gotten very good interaction with farmers, and farmers have been very open to it, we do need to see a higher level of implementation, and unfortunately the implementation needs a little bit of a push along. We feel that we were making the case for the EIP. That was one of the key reasons. Farmers needed that little bit of help to put these measures in, because financially it was a burden on them. So from that point of view, I think this will give that little bit of a nudge now to get some of those measures in that heretofore haven't gone in. And I know from talking to advisors, for example, if you have an EPA monitoring point, which samples, if that monitoring point isn't meeting the standards, well, then the whole water body is out. But oftentimes what you have is upstream, a field or two, you could have cattle accessing a drinking point, but it might be the only field that farmer has. that farmer may not have an alternative drinking supply. There may be no electricity. There may be no piped water. So, they can't fence off that water course. Otherwise, they've no water for the livestock. So the water body or the EPA monitoring point is continuing to be impacted. This is where the EIP comes in. You should see very quickly in a number of those around the country, and I know most advisors have a couple of these, very quickly turning around, because we have money now. Farmer can fence it off, get a nose pump, get a solar pump in, and we should see a very quick turnaround of those. So hopefully, and we're optimistic that we will see improvements.
Right. This is a big project. Like Noel said, it is the biggest EIP that the country's ever seen. Like, I'm sure if I'm a farmer at home, and we have many listeners that are farmers that are looking at this thinking, right, we have advisors on the ground to help us, both Co-op and Teagasc. Now we have money to support those advisors. Who do they contact, or how do they join, or what's the process?
Yeah, so as Noel mentioned earlier, we have a tiered system of access to the scheme. While the figures sound very high, a load of money, it won't go far unless it's targeted, and that right measure in the right place is hugely important. So the entry to the scheme will initially come from us. So the assessment will be done, the area will be identified, the pressures that are in the area, and then it will go through the ASSAP advisors. So the farmers will be approached by ASSAP advisors. A lot of them will know already that they qualify for it, because this has been coming down the line and they have their ASSAP advisors. And maybe the voluntary measures that were identified just weren't financially viable for them at the time. So this will give them the opportunity to put those measures in and to contribute to that. So they will be contacted by the ASSAP advisors. So it's not an open call. So it will come through the ASSAP scheme.
And I'll put my farmer hat on now. With all schemes comes complications. Is there going to be much paperwork to it, or how easy it is, how accessible will it be for the farmer, I suppose, to draw the money down after the job is done?
That's something that has been kind of to the fore for us on this side of the table. We know, like, the paperwork burden, nobody likes the paperwork burden, and particularly, if the burden outweighs the entry to the scheme, it's going to turn people off. So we're working on that to make sure that we minimize that as much as possible. We're developing an app that can be used by the advisors on the farm with the farmer, whereby the bulk of the work is done during the visit, and then the work that's required outside the visit will be done by the advisor. So we're really trying to minimize the additional work or the paperwork burden from the farmers who want to apply to the scheme.
I suppose the big thing as well, I'm assuming, like, the double payments are a problem. Like, obviously,
Yes.
if you're going to pay for something and someone else claiming for the same thing on acres or whatever other scheme, that's probably not a runner, I'm presuming.
No, that's not a runner, and that's something that internally we'll just have to do some validation checks where that arises. We can't double fund.
Yeah,
meters.
and I suppose there's a lot of farmers should know about this, and maybe a lot that don't know. What's your plans going forward to publicize it, or how do you plan to get it out there to the people involved?
Yeah, well, there's going to be a national launch of the scheme at a date in the future, but it will be publicised as part of a bigger water quality campaign. There's an awful lot of attention coming towards water quality at the moment, an awful lot of different organisations, and we're just going to have to work on a coordinated approach to get that out there, get the water quality message in general out there, and the Water EIP as part of the solution to the deteriorating water quality and the things that can be done to improve water quality. Separate to that, then, we are working with various different dairy co-ops in terms of giving information to their suppliers, things like that. So it'll be across a number of different forums. We haven't publicised it widely yet because we are just starting to implement the scheme. But we'll have a communications plan developed shortly, which will touch on all those different events.
Just contact your local friendly ASSAP advisor.
Yeah.
For details.
Cathal.
Deirdre there first up.
Yeah, exactly. No, look, it's exciting, and to be honest, I'd say you couldn't have timed it any better. And just to let you finish up, do you have any final messages to send out to our listeners?
Yeah, I suppose just maybe a more general kind of comment on it, and Mairéad mentioned about a more general water quality campaign. I think there is a growing sense around across the departments, across the regulators, across Teagasc, across co-ops, across farm orgs, that we do need to all knuckle down and work together to try and get water quality going in the right direction. And I suppose maybe just to temper a little bit as well, like while the Water EIP is fantastic to have, and I've no doubt that we will see water quality improvements at the back of it. It's not going to solve the whole country. It's too small. It's not going to do that. And I suppose for the people that are listening, the farmers that are listening, just to remind people, like it's a bit like in sport. You need to get your basics right. Your skill set and so on right, and your fitness levels. Well, from a farming point of view and water quality point of view, you need to get your basics right. The regulations that have been there since 2006, it's basics: slurry storage, soil water storage, close period, buffer margins, watching the weather forecast when you're spreading slurries, growth rates. All those basic things are the real key to improving water quality. We need better application of those across the country. And then where we have very specific problems, where we have issues that ASSAP can deal with, well, then that's where ASSAP and DIP come in. So look, just to remind everybody out there, get the basics right on your farm, and ASSAP EIP will work to get the rest of it done.
No, look, I think it's going to be an exciting time. As I said, it's the right time now as well, because there's a sense of urgency out there, as far as I can see on farms, with the 250 maps going to 220s for derogation farmers. And like Noel, you always say, the problem is not just in the south and the east side of the country. There's problems on the other side where there's no derogations as well. So I think it's really the public and on the farms are starting to see that we'll put our shoulder to wheel and do this. So I think this is going to be a huge step towards it. And like you said, we can't hit the whole country, but at least we can put a good template. And if someone looks over the ditch, they might see a nice idea and think it might implement it on their farm as well. So just like to wish you both the very best of luck with the IP going forward. It's over the next 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah, to the end of 2027.
And ourselves, Cathal.
And ourselves, yeah. We'll be on the farms with lots of farmers and our colleagues as well from the Teagasc and also the dairy co-ops as well. So there'll be lots of work going ahead in the next few years, lots of new stuff on farms, and hopefully in 4 years' time we'll see a big improvement from the farmers' side anyway. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Carl. Thanks, Deirdre.
So there you have it, plenty to look forward to. Thanks to Mairéad Whitty from the Local Authorities Water Programme and Project Lead for the Water EIP, and Noel Meehan, Teagasc Manager of the ASSAP Programme.
Myself and Deirdre will be back in 2 weeks' time, but do give us a review on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to the Environment Edge podcast.